Well, really excited to be joined today by Danielle Anderson. A fantastic opportunity to really get a really good insight into somebody who I've respected and known for quite some time now. So previously has worked for a number of fantastic organisations, and most recently with Dunhill. So keen to open up the floor and really ask you a couple of questions to get your insight into some key questions, really. So I'll start off with a particular question. So thank you.
Of course, thank you.
So what led you to focus your career on customer experience and digital? And then partly as well, what do you enjoy the most about that element of the role?
Through digital, you can create anything. And so even in my undergraduate studies, I did computer programming, and you have this blank screen initially. But through logic and this language, this truly unique language, you can create any of these front-end experiences. And so what I love is actually the creativity. Often people think technology is quite boring, but it's one of the most kind of blue sky thinking, clear canvases that you can paint any picture or any experience.
I completely agree. I think it's a really interesting dynamic. So no, thank you for that. And from a sort of a customer needs, sort of as they are always changing, along the way, and which they connect the brands and what informs sort of from a strategic decision and innovation. How's that sort of brought to life in your thought process?
Yeah, I always think of it, there's two halves of this discussion. The first one is analyzing what you know. So looking at historical information of how customers have behaved, starting with your competitors, for example, what are they doing? And actually a really important point here in terms of informing strategic decisions is not thinking of your competitive set linearly. Customers have full lifestyles. So where they shop, where they buy clothing, where they bank, especially in digital, the sea rises. So if who you bank with really improves their capabilities, you can't lag just because you're in a different industry. So I think the first thing is thinking more broadly through benchmarks and competitive best practices. The second bit, of course, is thinking about your customers. So as much as possible, and everyone knows this, we really need to focus on our first-party data. And as third-party data and algorithms change and privacy becomes such a huge concern, it's really making sure the information that you have about your own customers is relevant, will help you improve that experience and help you make decisions about what you should do in the future. So the ideal, customer database is a single source of truth, as we always know, but it also should have more than just the transactional and behavioral information about what the engagement is with your brand. Mm-hmm. Ideally, you're overlaying some demographic information, segment information, et cetera. And then most importantly, getting a level of psychographics. So you really can understand how your customers think, how they feel, and ultimately what they will do as you launch new products and services. Another touch point in terms of relevant, current, or historical information, your own team members. So many times people forget about your frontline team, especially in the retail environment, that is living and breathing and experiencing customers on a daily basis. So asking them and understanding how those customers are engaging with your brand, or even asking them about, we're thinking about adding this product or this service. How do you feel about that? And often that can actually not just on an ad hoc basis, but be captured in more of a clienteling tool, which a lot of us are familiar with. It's not just for one-way information and unlocking the power of CRM in your database, but it also can be a great source of inputting information. So that's the first box that I think about. What do we know, and how can we analyze what historical behaviors and information to have insight? And then it's thinking about the future and predicting and foresight. So first and foremost, trend reports. It's so important, not just about customer trends. I mean, especially in the recent years, so much has changed in our own lives. We know that we're in a very uncertain environment right now. So not only understanding how customers are feeling about everything around them, the geopolitical, economic aspects of the cost of living crisis, energy crisis, uncertainty with a lot of wars and things like that, but also understanding what are the new trends in technology. What do we expect customers to be engaging with in terms of, everybody's heard now about generative AI and ChatGPT. So how does that potentially change how you act as a business and solutions that you use? Then, of course, customer trends. And actually, there's a fantastic report on Mintel for 2023 where it talks about 5 big trends. And one of them, for example, is this idea of international localism. People, wherever they are trying to think more local. And that's not only from a sustainable aspect, but also just getting more involved in their communities. There's also this bit where consumers, again, being hit by so many of those elements that I spoke about before, they want the noise to just quiet. They want brands that they can connect with, brands that reduce all of the friction. So taking those different levels of trend reports, I think the other thing that's also really helpful is, as we'll speak about a lot, putting the customer first. So mapping their journeys with your own brand, understanding their current pain points and where there's opportunities to change things really helps focus in on which decisions and changes you can make. And then a third tool that I think is going to have growing importance in the years to come, and that's called behavioral economics. Now, I wrote down the definition, so I get this right. So behavioral economics combines the elements of economics and psychology to understand how and why people behave the way they do in the real world. And this is so important because we all feel very unique as people, and we are all individuals, but there are proven biases and behaviors that are just natural ways that we conduct ourselves as human beings. And so by studying behavioral economics, you can get a sense of how customers, especially in experiences in UX, will engage with your brand. And there's an incredible company called Coglode, Coglode, that I've worked with in the past to design digital experiences, but this also applies to physical experiences, and just really understanding nuances of when you make this color or put this button there or put 2 items or 3 options, how customers will react differently in those experiences. So once you take insight from what you already know, and you think about all of these capabilities for predictive analytics or foresight, bring that together. The most important last step in these strategic decisions and innovations to make them relevant is having a cross-organizational team together. So the people team, the operations team, the marketing team, the tech team, finance, how do you bring everybody together, share this knowledge of past behaviors and future predictions, and then make decisions? And I find, listen, nothing's ever proven and perfect, but it gives you gets a long way down the road in terms of making the most relevant and best decisions for your brand.
Absolutely. And, in the recent years, knowing your customer base is such a fundamental, and you can see businesses and brands that have really engaged and taken that understanding and the data and all the elements to it is, and then marketing and taking it to the next level from a brand perspective.
Agreed. Absolutely.
So what do you think, you work for some incredible brands, as I mentioned before, what do you see as one of the most defining moments in your career that you kind of look back on, reflect fondly or not, depending?
Well, I can easily answer that question. My absolute favorite role that I've had was for a coffee startup, an independent brand called Harris and Hool. And while that might sound a bit strange, especially when you wear the cap of digital and you think about coffee being a very kind of sensory experience, the warmth of the cup, the taste, the environment that you're in as a third space. But what I loved about this was it was a new brand that was entering what has always been a very crowded marketplace. There are a lot of big players. So you truly do need to be disruptive and do something differently to get customers to try something new. And so what I loved about Harris and Hool was I worked with an incredible set of 3 founders, 3 siblings, who said, we want to differentiate and democratize a great coffee experience. So bridge from these massive global companies who are well known, but may not serve the best cup of coffee in terms of provenance and experience, all the way to independent coffee shops, which at the time could still be quite alienating or intimidating to a customer who didn't feel like they knew all the different types of coffee and beans and how, you would procure a cherry, which is actually where coffee starts with. And that was this gap in a very crowded market. And so what I loved about it is the company in itself was already looking to disrupt an industry. And that creates a very exciting culture that feels mission-led, feels purpose-led, and you're all very much on the same page. And my role in digital wasn't just about thinking digital, but it was thinking about how digital could help create a differentiated experience. And so we at the time created an app where literally you take your phone and it was back when we were just having tools such as Tinder. And I know it sounds a bit weird to mention that, but if you mention kind of the swipe left and right, but what we did is we actually created these coffee cards where you could swipe left, swipe right, and build your exact coffee. But it was very gamified. It was really enjoyable, but it gave little bits of knowledge so that you'd almost have these little, dinner table conversations of how we were educating people in very digestible bits. So you do that, you'd have fun setting up your coffee. And when you walk into any of the time, our height, we were about 50 shops, you'd check in and you would put your phone away and you would walk up to the till and I could say, welcome back, AJ. Would you like your usual? Because that was one of these elements where we pulled everything together. We didn't just do innovation for innovation's sake, but it was truly integrated. So what a customer would have is a front-end app. But everything that happened in the background was that we had a CRM system in the cloud that real time would then send with that check-in, geolocated, it would send the information, only the relevant information, to the till. So me as an employee or a barista at Harrison Houle, I would see your name, I would see your coffee order, just what you need. There's more information there, but again, it was about what that relevant bit of information is for that experience. You hopefully would say, yes, I'll take my usual. And I would then read it back to you, which then showed that I really do know you. It's not just, hey, do you want your usual, Jay? But I just want to make sure that this is right. And then the other benefit was that it would be able to give you digital loyalty points and you'd be able to pay by the app, not by scanning, not by tapping, but simply by saying yes. Because actually there were 3 security protocols, again, designed in the process. The first was you would have uploaded an image of yourself, a passport-worthy photo, for us to be able to even allow you to put money on the app. So I visually would be able to acknowledge you. The second thing is by you acknowledging your usual order and your name. Because again, coffee is quite simple in terms of what you can layer in, but actually all of those combinations do create this infinite number almost that uniquely identifies you. And then the third bit is you acknowledging yourself that yes, you would like to pay at the app. Those were our 3 security questions effectively. And so you would say yes, your app would then ping with the amount of money, the location, and what you ordered. And maybe you weren't looking at your phone, so you'd see that later. But all of that would happen while we have eye contact. So what I loved about that experience was it was creating a truly unique, not digital solution, but experience that leveraged the actual architecture of the store. So the way that we thought about the flows and where we put tills and how we put signage in the stores for people to come up and know if they're on the app, they had a different queue. The second thing was the people and the training of them to use the system very fluidly as part of, that information adding to the transaction, the operations team, the technology team. So all of that came together. And what I'm proudest of is that even though we had excellent feedback from our competitors by way of seeing a lot of them doing a bit of mystery shopping in our stores and got great industry reviews, is the fact that a customer couldn't quite explain why they loved Harrison Houle. It wasn't just the app experience. It wasn't just the environment. It wasn't just the coffee. All of it added to this incredible bit where it just felt like home. It was magic. They knew me. And so I think that for me is why I love that experience, because it was creating something from nothing, but doing it in a very purpose-led organization and a cross-organizational team that created a unique experience, which did get customers to cross by the Starbucks, the Nero, the Illy's, the independent coffee shops to come to Harrison Houle because it was different.
I don't know. At this point, I should say I don't drink coffee or tea. However, I am.
You can order tea as well or juice.
But what's next in your own career journey?
So great question. I think it's one of these things where life is what happens when you're making plans. So, TBD on everything. But what I'm currently doing is I'm doing board advisory work. And for about 7 years, I founded a company called Perspective Consulting, which focused on customer experience, digital transformation and strategy and innovation. So I'm working with some exciting brands on projects. The ultimate goal, though, in the medium term will be to find another exciting, I would call them Harrison Houle-esque opportunity in that corporate chemistry of a brand that is truly customer-centric and puts the customer at the heart of everything they do, that is looking to be disruptively innovative to a certain industry, to just the status quo, that's getting on these big 5 trends of sustainability or new technologies. And then I think the last bit is ultimately a brand that's really thinking not just about innovation now, but future trends. So as I mentioned, sustainability is quite a big trend. equity and access, if you think about healthcare and education, connected ecosystems, think about our homes, our cars, transportation, retail, in terms of being able in the future to buy this dress, but then within the label, understand how to take care of it. And then you could actually just scan that label and send it into your dry cleaner. So how do all these things connect together? And so that's what I'll be looking for that next opportunity to really make meaningful change for the sake of the customer.
Well, I look forward to watching from afar and going forward from there. But no, thank you so much. No, it's been an absolute pleasure.
AJ.
It's been
Really
lovely to
enjoyed
speak
it.
to you as always it is, and I wish you well.